Hello. Uh-oh. I'll be right back. It says there's something wrong with chat. So give me a second. Hello. I'll be right back. Ah! Hello. Okay, I got it. Thanks, Dad. Okay. I think I'm good. Okay. I am so sorry about that. That was not good. Happy Tuesday. It has been kind of one of those days. So I'm not even all that surprised. But yeah, that's how today's gone. But yeah, hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. I'm Rosebud Reads, and I am so glad that you're here. Hello, Momars Rover, Chichi Kiki, Annika, Plude, Stark Lord, Truffle. I see you, Peacock Pages. And yeah, I hope all of you had a great weekend, had a happy Halloween, and enjoyed. Those are some pretty cool metal recs. I know the one that I put out there this weekend wasn't exactly metal. There's actually like a little bit of country mix in there. I listened a little bit more to it and kind of saw that, but like I'm glad we used this time productively to talk about it. But yeah, thank you all for sticking around while I figured that out. That was a little ridiculous. But yeah. Oh, I'm glad you got some dishes done, Truffle. And I'm sorry it's been that kind of Tuesday for you, Plude. But yeah. Welcome. This is a pretty chill channel, and usually there are less tech issues than this if this is your first time. But we have a very positive community here, so we deal with it and move on. This is the first session of book 2 of Thousand Autumns, and of course, Plude. So that means it's also our mystery box day. But also, I am so very excited to say that a number of new books have come today. The most excited of which about is this beauty. It's so pretty. Like, they're gorgeous always, of course, but that managed to get out on time to vote. Then I promptly went grocery shopping and forgot to get 2 things I was nearly out of. That's hard. Right? It's so shiny. But like, look at that picture. Like, I'll put it in front of my face so you can see the boys. But it's so gorgeous. And then like the back is of course continuing the image. Like, and then look at this. Look at this. It's so pretty. And then of course the inside. You finally got copper coins. Nice. Look at this. It's so pretty. And then we have MXTX little signature down there, I think. And then here's like the full image of the cover and back around. So it's so pretty. And like, there's the other image of but yeah, it's so pretty. And then this is the cover. And side. Rejoice, Wei Wuxian is dead. So pretty. Just getting through a whole saga with the library. Nice. I was so excited when this came. Like, of all of MXTX's series, this one's the one I truly have a soft spot for. Like, it literally came out. Oh my gosh, I missed it. It's Wingy. Am I? Yeah, I'm up. Beechen. It's hard to see it. Hang on. Cover my face so you could maybe see it. Beechen. I did not notice that. Oh no. I mean, yeah, a little fair. Right? Like, I noticed this, of course, because, like, it's right in my face, but then I was like, oh, no, put it down. What? Oh, okay. So that is book 1. And these all arrived in the same box. But then this also came out. So once they're all out, I'm going to reread these. And I have the other ones back there, just kind of chilling. Oh, you like the gobble? I made it myself. And put up the leaves. No, that it really is unfairly shiny. And then they also have the fancy detailing, but it's the flowers. And then flowers. And then Sun Liang. Or not Sun. Shai Lian. Then this is gorgeous. This is the Calamities. You saw live turkeys today, Truffle? That's awesome. They're such funny birds. Like, they're not very intelligent birds. Like, if it starts raining and they're outside, like, they can potentially drown because they'll just be looking up. And then here's the cover. In the back. He was just one person to but Shai Lian. It felt like the entire world was supporting him. Aw. Okay. So we've got our Calamities. And we've got our signature. Which I love. And of course, our mecha battle. This is one of my favorite of the doodles, is when they're just like having a date in Ghost City. Like, it's so cute. Oh, I'm super excited of the ho-ho. I love that scene. That was so funny. Okay. So there's that one. The eyeball monster is smiling. And then this one isn't as shiny, like, at all, by any degree, but I am really looking forward to reading this one. It's just got out. I don't know a ton about it, but I am excited to read this. The way I've been kind of justifying it to myself is I've been buying them like, oh, it just came out like today. But yeah, it just came out. So that's probably why you haven't seen it. Or like this weekend, maybe. But here's the other picture for this one. But yeah, I've been justifying it with like each paycheck I'll buy one. So then it's a little more spread out. But yeah, it's still a commitment. But it's like MXTX is what got me into Danmei. So it's like, okay. They know how to squeeze the money out of us, Danmei readers, don't they? They really do. But it's just so pretty. And then they added extra stuff in there. So, of course, it's like, but what's the new parts? I want to see what's new. No, that's totally the way to do it. That's how I look at my Amazon wish list, and it's like books, weird, random, like specific item, like other thing that I only know or am gonna do something with, like for Danmei, something shiny, books. Like shiny always works. Okay. Blind box time. So last time we got this one, which I was super excited about. What am I aiming for this time? In all honesty, I'd be perfectly fine if I didn't get any of the hidden editions. I really like all these. Like, okay, so here's a reminder. These are our potential choices. Like, I like all of these. Books and cosplay stuff. So relatable. All of that. Like, I literally had people telling me last year, I'm not buying you plushies. Pick something else. Which tells you exactly what's on my list. So I put books, and then they were like, fine. I think this time, I kind of want this one. We'll see if I'm right. I'm feeling this one right here. All right. Oh, there it is. Books, teas, and a new slider barrette. My house ate my nice copper barrette. No! That sucks. All right, we're not going to look. I almost looked by habit. Okay. Let's open it. Ooh. Okay. This one's really cute too. What did they name this one? Okay, I can't read that. Okay. Oh, but I can read this, probably. Oh, wrong card. Oh. The pastor. Oh, it'd be even better if it was the Pope. Those who know. Hang on. There we go. That's really detailed. Like look at that. Like, wow. I love the little bows too. Like, it adds that element of cute to everything. Right? The face is adorable. I think the eyes are like a little bit shiny. So cute. All right, so this will be our new bookmark for book 2. Okay. I know with the tech problems, we didn't really like get to it, but did other than seeing turkeys, did anyone else do something fun this weekend? Go trick-or-treating? Have a very interesting costume come to your house? Anything like that? Genie, make a wish. I'm not sure I have, actually. Sounds fun, though, if that is how the characters act. Passed out candy. All right, Chi-Chi Kiki. Okay, where should I put you? I think I'm going to put you right here for now, and we'll figure out where to put you later. Your younger little one had his 2nd birthday on Saturday. Happy birthday! That's really sweet. Ah, you went to Spirit Halloween for after Halloween sales. That's smart. That's really smart. Oh, hang on. Watched horror movies, attended a virtual concert, met your new neighbors. All right, Truffle, that sounds like a really fulfilling weekend. Watched scary movies with my friends and got a haircut from someone dressed as Elle Woods from Legally Blonde. That's awesome. It's really fun. Oh, sounds like a good weekend. I was really disappointed. We had like 4 groups total that came and trick-or-treated. One of them, nothing against this, one of them was like high school students that looked like they were kind of on a date. But like, I just was like, kids in their costumes, when they're so excited, they're so cute. And I was like, oh. And I mean, one of the groups we knew were coming because our neighbors were like, we're going to show off my mom and dad their costume. They wanted to come show my parents their costume. So we knew they were coming. But like, then it was 2 random groups of kids, which was fine. But I was just like, oh. All good. You didn't get any trick-or-treaters? It's, my theory is that either since it was Friday, like people were going to parties, or just like kids did trunk or treat or something else and just didn't go. Because I don't know. Oh, that'll it's like flipping a coin with the being in an apartment. Also depends on how old the kids are. But anyway, let me get out my Post-it notes so I can write down timestamps. Wow, 30? That's half of what you used to have? All right. No, I feel like there's been less and less trick-or-treaters by the year. Which makes me a little sad because I remember how much fun I used to have going trick-or-treating with family and friends. I hope their kids are still like into Halloween. My niece and nephew still are, and they're getting older. My nephew's a little bit over it, but my niece is still going strong. Oh, they had double Annika. That's interesting. Did they have enough candy? I hope they did. Oh, yeah. I'm going to count. I'm going to start the clock, even though I'm going to be talking about like the picture and show the pictures, because I feel like that's when we actually do book stuff. Oh, wait! Book stuff! Your nieces are still really into Halloween. I'm happy to hear that. Okay. I almost forgot about our fanfic recs for the week, or for today. So, for the Scum Villain recommendation, I picked kind of a little bit of a sadder pick. Neutral Net inspired list of costumes might do Bride of Grocery one year. That's funny. And full-size candy bars are always amazing. Cotton candy. Nice. Cotton candy will always be a hit, no matter what age people are. So for the Scum Villain recommendation, I picked The Grand Recollection of the Beast Peak Head Disciple by User on Hiatus. So as I said, it's a bit of a sadder pick. It's a complete, and it's really beautifully written, and also has illustrations. It has a lot of different point of views in it, which I thought was super interesting. And kind of complicated for the writer to, like, it's impressive that the writer chose to do it. Yeah, Neutral Net is funny. But yeah, The official summary is there is a sword mound on Qiangding Peak. It stands nestled within a wreath of thousand wishes hollies, encircled by drooping trees of millions gold, just a few steps within the Lingxi caves in a side cavern shrouded by the luscious greenery of the cold cave. There sits a sword mound, waiting. Shen Yuan is the head disciple of the Beast Peak on Qian Mountain Sect, or, well, he was the head disciple. Following a tragedy within the Lingxi caves, a vacancy forms. The head disciples mourn a friend, and one of them mourns a lover. So, I left some of the notes in there, and then they also credited the artist, so I wanted to definitely include that. For the MDZS recommendation, I picked Light Source by ABC. It's a completed fic with some unexpected character focuses and a rather refreshing take on Wei Wuxian leaves the Jiang sect prompt. So this is another one of those that, like, it's shorter, so, like, it's a quicker read. It's not a one, well, it is technically a one-shot, but it's one of those longer ones. And so the summary is, for a moment he felt it, resentment coiling in his gut. He feels so done. At 18, Wei Wuxian realized he's done. What does Yu Furen want me to do? I want you gone from our lives, away, somewhere I can't see you. From this day forth, I, Wei Wuxian, is renouncing my title as the head disciple of Yunmeng Jiang, in which, after they were saved from the Xuanwu cave, Wei Wuxian was punished by Yu Zuan, and he decided that he'd had enough. Wei Wuxian defected from Yunmeng Jiang sect. He left, and he did not look back. And the rabbits. You saw them. I wanted to bring some, but I figured that Lan Shan could use some friends. You said the rabbits have ribbons? Yes, they do, but they didn't have it when I returned. I think it vanished with ancestor Lan Yi's spirit. Lan Shichen's brows furrowed. Why does he feel like he missed something? And in which Lan Shichen realized that something more happened in the Cold Pond Cave. Or a story where Wei Wuxian defected from Yunmeng Jiang sect before the attack, and what happened to him and everyone else after that. So, those are the picks that I have for today. So yeah, the top one's definitely a bit sad, but a really good read. Just if you're expecting happy, there's a little bit of happy, but a lot of intense emotions. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. Now, I'm going to start the timestamp for this here at 31 because I'm also going to show off, like, the title or, like, the cover and everything. So this is the cover for book 2, and we see our boy doing a pretty intense face grab right there. So you got a little more knowledge about all that. But yeah. And then, yep, that happens. Here's a bigger picture of it, or, like, more complete picture. Ooh-hoo-hoo! Oh boy. Part of me wonders if I should change the color of the light, because it really affects the light colors of everything else. So hang on. Let me show you. Nope, that didn't work either. Huh. Nope, that's... So I want to show you the actual colors. So These are the actual colors instead of everything just being green. Because that's kind of what's been happening with the light, because it cancels out everything. There we go. Okay. So last time we had Duan. Yeah, the art is so good in these books. Melmar's Rover, I agree. We had Duan something charging into the... I think I'm just going to keep it like this. I've had it on green for a while. I'm kind of tired of green. But yeah. Duan something burst into the banquet and was challenging Madam Qin and saying, hey, Kunyi, Hulugu had you as a disciple, and you stole a trinket from him, which happened to be a ring that allowed all these nations to converge and would be then led as troops to go attack potentially the Su family. Thank you, Truffle. The Su family matriarch kind of admits it then and is like, yeah, this ring on my finger, like, yeah, it is. What about it, basically? And then basically Duan Wenyang basically also is like, by the way, Shen Qiao, old sect leader of Xuandu Mountain, how about you observe this handover and like my master's last wish? And basically is like, by the way, he's right there. Just so you all know, he's right there. So that's where we are now. I'm gonna put this down just a little bit. I feel like it's staring at the light up there. Okay. Shen Qiao got doxxed. Yeah, he did. He basically did. Facing the astonished gazes of the crowd. Oh, chapter 32, Sword Intent. Facing the astonished gazes of the crowd, Shen Qiao remained utterly calm. This Shen is no longer the sect leader. I fear I must disappoint you, Duan Xiang. Of course, Duan Wenyang knew who Shen Qiao was. Duan Wenyang was the one who'd sent the message challenging Shen Qiao to duel Kunyi. Duan Wenyang was Kunyi's Shixian, but his social status among the Gokturks was lower than Kunyi's because of his Han blood. That was why Kunyi had represented Hulugu in the duel and Duan Wenyang had not. But he's not bitter about that at all. Duan Wenyang laughed. Sect leader Shen is truly an outstanding hermit. One who does his seclusion in the cities. Given your moral prestige, I fear even the people of Chuanyang Monastery would have to defer to you if they knew your identity. Why the need to attend this party under the pretext of sect leader Yan's name? Unless the rumors around the Jianghu are true. They say you have a deep relationship with sect leader Yan and are always together. No one had expected this. They'd come to celebrate a birthday, but were treated to 2 full-blown back-to-back dramas instead. The room was abuzz. Every guest was watching Shen Qiao, indescribable amazement written on their faces. Even Puliru Jian, sitting beside him, was stunned and turned to look at him. I do have a feeling he's going to keep popping up. After Shen Qiao had fallen from the cliff, he was nowhere to be found, either alive or dead. Everyone guessed that he might have felt guilty for Xuandu Mountain's sake and was too ashamed to appear in public again, so had chosen to conceal his identity. Maybe he was even living in the mountains as a recluse. They absolutely hadn't expected him to appear at a birthday banquet thrown by a noble family of northern Shou. Li Qingyu scrutinized Shen Qiao carefully, and disappointment filled his heart. When Li Qingyu had gone to Xuandu Mountain, he'd been regretful that he couldn't duel Shen Qiao. But now, looking at the man's frail, emaciated appearance, his regret grew even deeper. He no longer lamented that he'd lost a rival, though. He lamented that his rival was unworthy to be his rival. Shen Qiao remained silent, not answering any of Duan Wenyang's questions. Madam Qin sighed and removed her ring, passing it to her son. This originally belonged to Hulugu, and times have changed. The object is still here, but the person no longer is. It should be returned to its original owner. Take it. She'd come from a prestigious family, yet had gone all the way to the Gokturks to find a master, and she'd formed a deep connection with Hulugu. For as long as they could remember, Su Wei and Shen Qiao had always thought that their mother was only an ordinary noble lady who shared a close and loving relationship with their father. Now, as they heard the complicated emotions in their mother's voice, it dawned on them that her relationship with Hulugu went beyond that of a normal master and disciple. Ooh. Getting some drama. And Hulugu himself was even stranger. He'd lost his keepsake, but instead of coming to retrieve it, he'd loitered for more than 30 years. Only now, with Duan Wenyang's appearance, had these past affairs been finally revealed to the public. Shen Qiao was racked with anxiety, but he couldn't press the issue given where they were at the moment. No, I know. I was being dramatic. Shen Qiao was racked with anxiety, but he couldn't press the issue given where they were at the moment. He could only take the ring and hand it to a subordinate, who passed it on to Duan Wenyang. Once he'd received the ring, Duan Wenyang performed the Gokturk salute. This one is deeply grateful for Madam Qin's understanding and principles. With this keepsake, I can settle things for my master. How did Hulugu pass away? Asked Madam Qin. Duan Wenyang sighed. In his search for the union of man and heaven, my master secluded himself, seeking a breakthrough. He ordered us not to enter or disturb him for 3 years. The moment that time was up, we went in to check on him. Unexpectedly, we discovered that his esteemed self had already passed away while sitting in meditation. The more elderly people present at the banquet still remembered Hulugu's ambitious sweep of the Central Plains experts long ago, before Chief Ingui had finally stopped him. He was a grand master of his generation, yet in the end, he too had been carried away on the wind. From now on, no matter what storms surged within the Jianghu, they had no connection to Hulugu or Chief Ingui. The talented and the gifted scattered in the winds, leaving sighs and lamentations in their wake. Madam Qin was silent. None could say what she was thinking. Su Wei and Shen Qiao still hated that Duan Wenyang had ruined their mother's birthday banquet, and they no longer bothered with niceties. Since you have the ring, we ask your distinguished self to leave the Sioux residence at once. Like, dude, you had to do this at my mom's birthday party? Really? Don't be in a rush to drive me away, sirs, said Duan Wenyang. I came to you to ask for someone. Shen Qiao, thinking he was going to pull something else on his mother, said coldly, We don't have anyone you want here. Duan Wenyang laughed. Su Erlong hasn't even heard the question before refusing. Relax, I mean no harm to Madam Qin. Now that the ring's been returned, my master's wish has been fulfilled, so of course I won't trouble her any further. Tespar Khagan commanded me to look for someone, and that is whom I'm seeking. Sui said, Then you should say so to His Majesty. The Su residence is but a small temple. It cannot accommodate a great Buddha like you. Guards, escort him out. Wait, said Duan Wenyang. Does the Duke of Meiyang County have a younger sister who married Yuan Xiang? We have enmity with this man. The Khagan orders that I bring him and his entire family back to the Khaganate to be dealt with, if there is to be an alliance between us and the show. And so I ask the Duke of Meiyang County to please hand them over. Sui's expression fell. In fact, the family Duan Wenyang spoke of was his cousin's. His cousin's husband, Yuan Xiang, had offended the Gokturks, and the family was deathly afraid that they would use the alliance to ask for them. They'd fled to Sui's house, and Sui had secretly taken them in. But he hadn't expected that Duan Wenyang would discover this news and come knocking on his door relentlessly in pursuit. I know not where they've gone, said Sui. If you're looking for someone, go seek them out yourself. It has nothing to do with the Su residence. I asked the Duke of Meiyang County to please not make things so difficult for me, said Duan Wenyang. I came to your house to ask you for them out of consideration for the deep connection between Madam Qin and my master. Otherwise, I would have reported this matter directly to your majesty and waited for the Lord of Show's decree. But I fear that would embarrass your esteemed residents. Shen Qiao was furious. You specifically chose the day of my mother's birthday to swagger about. First you asked for the ring, and we gave it to you. Now that we've given you an inch, you're taking a mile. Do you think the Su family is afraid of you? If we say they're not here, they're not here. Get out. I mean, I kind of called it. Duan Wenyang, too, lost his smile. He narrowed his eyes at Shen Qiao and said slowly, I heard that Su Erlang is a disciple of Chunyang Monastery, so your skills must be extraordinary. Since we happen to meet today, I would like to ask you for some pointers. Shen Qiao sneered. Well, the fox's tail is finally exposed. You clearly came to cause a scene, yet you've put on such an innocent act. You came to us yourself, so don't go crying and tattling to your Gokturk Khagan if you leave here dead or disabled. As soon as he'd spoken, he'd lunged at Duan Wenyang. His lunge wasn't without form or method. Rather, it complemented his sword techniques. His body flowed as he willed it, the movements bold and beautiful. Right away, someone shouted, Spectacular! Faced with Shen Qiao's swordplay as brilliant as snow, Duan Wenyang remained completely composed. He didn't back up, only waited until Shen Qiao's sword glare had swept in great swathes until it was directly in front of him. Then he reached right into it, empty-handed. I really do love how they write the fight scenes. It's super different, but really descriptive. When his hand touched the shining blade, it wasn't ground into pieces by the sword glare. He held it, dead in place. Everyone stared at the sight of them, at Duan Wenyang's right hand firmly clamped onto the blade as he gently rotated his wrist. It didn't look like he used much strength, but the blade bounced and whined. Shen Qiao's sword nearly flew from his hand. An expression of disbelief appeared on his face. His martial arts didn't compare to his Shidi Li Qingyu's, but he'd still ascended into the ranks of the first rate. Never before had he experienced a situation where he stood on the precipice of defeat almost as soon as the fight began. And I could see that, Truffle. They are a little more flowery with details other than, like, percentages. They do like their percentages. Could it be because his opponent was Hulugu's disciple and so was on a different level entirely? Shen Qiao refused to accept this. He rapidly changed tactics. Without staying still for even a moment, he withdrew his hand and backed up several steps, then made a sharp turn with the help of a pillar. He lobbed a sword glare combined with true chi at Duan Wenyang's face, while gathering power in his other palm and striking at him with this as well. "It's too cramped in here," said Duan Wenyang. "It's hampering the fun of the fight." Duan Wenyang didn't take the attack straight on. Instead, he laughed brightly and turned around, leaping for an exit to the gate. Ha ha ha! Percentages and fractions. I have my calculator ready tonight. Good, Peacock Pages. You'll need it. Shen Qiao was in hot pursuit, and the two of them fought from within the house to without. In a split second, sword glares were fired everywhere, while forebodingly cold air rolled around them. Naturally, the guests went outside to watch. Of course they did. One man's sword glares were as harsh as the surging rapids, swallowing everything as they rushed forward, while the other man remained barehanded, wandering within the sword glares. It seemed that Duan Wenyang constantly teetered on the edge of disaster, his situation as precarious as a house of cards, yet time and time again he pulled through by the skin of his teeth. It was a breathtaking sight for the guests. Some, like Princess Qingdu, knew no martial arts and were unwilling to watch the bloodshed. They chose to remain in the house with Madam Qin, who hadn't left either. The laymen were watching for the excitement, while the professionals were watching for reference. The spectators, whose martial arts were beyond a certain level, realized that even though Duan Wenyang looked like he was treading on thin ice, in reality, he held the upper hand. Tuyuhun Jian made a sound of surprise, then whispered to Shen Qiao, "From how I see it, Su Erlong is being toyed with." Shen Qiao nodded. "I feel the same." Hearing him say that, Tuyuhun Jian couldn't help but ask curiously, "Shen Qiang, you can see?" Shen Qiao smiled. "I may not be able to see, but I can hear." "How can you hear what's happening?" "The swing of a sword, their true chi, footsteps, and even breathing. These all have sound. If you're blind, your ears will become even sharper. Duan Wenyang wants to observe Chunyang Monastery's martial arts, so he isn't rushing to decide the battle. It's a pity that Shen Qiao hasn't realized it. He's under Duan Wenyang's sway now." It definitely couldn't be only Shen Qiao and Tuyuhun Jian who'd realized what was happening. But since there wasn't yet a clear winner to the battle, if anyone rashly interfered, first it'd affect the fairness of the match, which was disgraceful. And secondly, it would look like they were patronizing Shen Qiao. Hence, even as Shidi, Li Qingyu could do nothing but wait quietly for the conclusion to arrive. When Tuyuhun Jian heard Shen Qiao's answer, he said thoughtlessly, "Since Kunyi and Duan Wenyang are both Hulugu's disciples, who's the stronger one?" Only once the words were out did he realize that they were somewhat inappropriate. He quickly apologized. I didn't mean to bring up Shen Qiao's painful memories." Shen Qiao laughed. "It's fine. Though Kunyi is strong, the harsh arrogance of his martial arts means they're not as carefree and untrammeled as Duan Wenyang's. I mean, untrammeled as Duan Wenyang's. I'm gonna guess, like, unbothered, basically. Unrushed. In my opinion, I believe that Duan Wenyang is closer to capturing the heart of his master's martial arts, and so he's a couple of notches above Kunyi." Tuyuhun Jian grew serious. If That's true, then I fear that this man didn't only come to the Su residence today to ask for the keepsake, or the family of Su Longjun's cousin, but also to make a name for himself. Shen Qiao nodded. I was thinking the same. Those with experience in Jianghu made up more than half of the birthday banquet's guests on account of Su Qiao's presence. Among these, many were experts from the younger generation, like Li Qingyu, and they could likely compete for a spot in the top 10 rankings. If Duan Wenyang defeated them, that would mean that he was stronger, and the effect would reverberate throughout the Jianghu just like the duel between Kun Yi and Shen Qiao. The Gokturks' advance was gradual but prudent, allying with Northern Shou through marriage while remaining ambiguous in their dealings with Northern Qi. They assisted Northern Shou in fighting Northern Qi with one hand, while sheltering Northern Qi nobles and officials who sought refuge with the other. One might think they were hesitant and undecided, swaying from side to side, but because of their great strength, neither Northern Shou nor Qi dared to unduly offend them, and the wolf had never concealed its ambitions. Now, a new generation of Gokturk experts had arrived in the Central Plains, one after another, almost as if they wanted to complete Hulugu's old, grandiose, unfulfilled desire for absolute dominance. First, Kun Yi had challenged Shen Qiao, crushing Xuandu Mountain underfoot and catapulting himself into the limelight with a single match. And today, another had come to the Su residence and challenged everyone. If not for how Kun Yi had suffered a loss at Yan Wushi's hands, the Gokturk's arrogance would have likely swelled even larger. As they spoke, they heard Duan Wenyang boom with laughter. Ha 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 ha! And dazzling sword glares stopped in an instant. I'm going to come up with a different laugh for the Gokturks. Maybe they'll have the wah-ha-ha! From where they'd been, there came Su Qiao's muffled groan. Before anyone could see how Duan Wenyang made his move, Su Qiao had already fallen off the roof. Erlang! Su Wei hurried forward and pulled him up. Are you all right? Su Qiao shook his head. His face was writhed in pain. Wretched in pain, but yet he bore it without making a sound. Duan Wenyang leapt down from the roof too, his demeanor incredibly casual. No one there held any fondness for him, but they were forced to acknowledge his strength. Duan Wenyang, you're taking this too far, said Su Wei angrily. Do you really think you can walk all over us? Duan Wenyang smiled derisively. That's incorrect. Country Duke, your brother started it. How can you blame me? If you're willing to hand over Yuan Xiang's family, I'll leave immediately and bother you no further. You've pushed, and we've made concession after concession, yet you take us as soft persimmons that you can walk all over. Since that's the case, let's see just how much Hulugu passed on down to you. Oh, it's Madam Qin. Walked out. She was already in her 50s, but perhaps because she'd practiced internal cultivation, her age didn't show. Instead, she carried an air of mature charm and the appearance of a beautiful woman in middle age. Duan Wenyang said regretfully, While we're on the topic, I should be calling the Madam Shiji. It's only a pity that the late master expelled you after you escaped the Khaganate with his ring. I'd heard that Shizun valued you greatly back then and used to even want you to be his successor. But Madam Qin, you used your beauty to seduce him, then stole his ring and fled. Recalling it all now, don't you feel any guilt? Silence! The Su brothers were enraged to hear him insult their mother. But Madam Qin just sneered. As a junior, the likes of you have no place to speak on matters that are between me and Hulugu. Did the Gokturks suffer such a drought of people that Hulugu could only accept a smack-talker like you as a disciple? She said to Su Wei, Dalang, bring me Erlang's sword. Before Su Wei could make a move, someone said Madam Qin need not lower herself to bother with a Gokturk barbarian. You don't have to trouble yourself so. This man fought a disciple of Chunyang Monastery, so naturally, it falls to the members of Chunyang Monastery to finish it. The one who spoke was Li Qingyu. Both his expression and tone were flat, without a shred of killing intent. But it was exactly that even tone that made Duan Wenyang turn serious. He scrutinized Li Qingyu closely for a while, then said, "You must be Li Gonzi, the other member of the twin jades of Qing Chang. From what I saw, your Shixian isn't even a match for one of your fingers, and yet he shares your title. What an injustice this is for you!" Li Qingyu ignored his provocations and drew a sword, its blade tip pointed downward. His wrist appeared relaxed, yet also slightly raised. His entire body radiated a sense of languid nonchalance. He didn't seem any more serious than he had a moment ago. Duan Wenyang's expression became graver and sterner, and a horsewhip somehow appeared in his hand. It was dark and slender, made of some unknown material that lacked even the slightest hint of shine. Yet, at the same time, it seemed completely ordinary. Tuyuhun Jian didn't know what to make of it. He couldn't resist but turned to Shen Qiao. "Shen Qiao, can you tell what's special about his whip?" Shen Qiao shook his head. "I can't see it very well." "What kind of whip is it?" Tuyuhun Jian described it to him. Shen Qiao mulled it over. "If my guess is right, the whip was made from soaking crocodile skins from the southern sea into a secret concoction of the Miao people. It is incredibly tough. Even the sharpest of weapons may fail to cut it." "Ah," said Tuyuhun Jian. "So it has a spectacular backstory indeed. Looks like Li Gonzi has met his match this time." It wasn't only Tuyuhun Jian. Everyone else had their necks stretched forward in anticipation, too. A fantastic battle was about to take place. It was near impossible to not be excited. Tuyuhun Jian had just finished speaking when Li Qingyu moved. Compared to Su Qiao, Li Qingyu's attack was like night and day. Su Qiao's movements were swift and harsh. He used his agility to achieve victory, and both his sword glares and chi were like a vast, inescapable net, enveloping his enemy, giving them nowhere to escape, and even striking a harsh psychological blow. His style was very effective against weaker opponents, but an expert like Duan Wenyang, whose internal cultivation was sturdy as a steel wall, could simply ignore Su Qiao's sword chi and smash right through to him. In contrast, Li Qingyu's movements were much slower and his manner composed and unflustered. Others only saw him evenly thrust his sword forward before twirling the tip in a daring feint. The blade tip wasn't even aimed at Duan Wenyang, but angled gently at the ground. His movements were almost indolent and languid, like a flower in slow bloom beneath the sun. However, in Duan Wenyang's eyes, true chi poured from Li Qingyu's body and into the blade tip with his twirling feint before, surging from his sword towards the ground. Wherever the chi struck, dark tiles were thrown into the air as cracks snaked the ground. The tile fragments swept up into the air current, shot straight at him. Before Duan Wenyang could make his next move, Li Qingyu was already in the air. Man and sword became one, and together they melded into a beam of white light that pierced right through the protective true chi around Duan Wenyang, as if it were empty air. Blazing sparks leapt in blues and violets, like a surging summer lightning. From slow to fast, calm to urgent, all these changes happened in an instant. If someone's attention had drifted even slightly, they'd have no time to understand what they were seeing. Duan Wenyang snapped his whip forward, striking both person and sword with perfect timing. Two blasts of true chi slammed into each other like an encounter between two kings. They rolled into each other with tremendous force, enough to overturn seas. In the end, either Duan Wenyang's whip would grind Li Qingyu's sword into pieces, or Li Qingyu's sword chi would destroy the whip. The result was completely unexpected, for Duan Wenyang's whip actually missed. Everyone had witnessed Li Qingyu's figure already beneath the whip's silhouette, yet somehow it had failed to swallow him. Instead, he simply vanished, then suddenly appeared to Duan Wenyang's left, right, and from behind. Every single Li Qingyu was performing the same action, thrusting the blade point evenly forward. At this moment, Shen Qiao and company heard someone's low shout from the side. Sword intent! Li Qingyu has managed to achieve sword intent! Remember, there's all those levels. Okay. I'll blow my nose too. I hear myself getting phlegmy. Okay. Boop. Um, 103:45. All right. Chapter 33. Unexpected Development. There were 4 echelons of the sword: sword chi, sword intent, sword heart, and sword spirit. When laymen saw the sword chi of its wielder running rampant, the chi controlling the sword itself, they'd think that the person's swordplay was extraordinary. But in truth, this was only the first level when it came to entering the echelons of the sword. Of course, not everyone could achieve even the first echelon of sword chi. Some people spent their entire lives trying and still failed to pass through the gate, unable to glimpse the way in. And even more people relied on fixed moves to prevail over their enemies. It had only been through Yan Wushi's relentless pressure, forcing Shen Qiao to hover on death's doorstep, that Shen Qiao himself was able to fight his way past certain doom and gain insight into sword intent. They are definitely getting chunky. I mean, that one was 24 pages. I think, how many chapters am I reading? So I'm reading from 32 through 35. So, I mean, that's the usual length that I read. So, yeah, I think they are getting a little chunkier. And yet, Li Qingyu had managed to achieve the echelon of sword intent at such a young age. The immensity of his martial aptitude was evident. But as he'd just broken through to sword intent mere moments ago, he was still unfamiliar with it. Perhaps, if he'd broken through back on Xuandu Mountain, he wouldn't have lost UI by half a move. All in all, the moment the words sword intent were uttered, everyone looked at Li Qingyu with new eyes. Yi Chen was already one of the world's top 10 cultivators, and now there was Li Qingyu too. It looked like Chunyang Monastery's rise was already unstoppable. Duan Wenyang didn't resign himself to defeat. Even though he couldn't immediately determine which of the after images was the true Li Qingyu, he didn't choose to sort them out. Instead, he chose to snap his whip at the ground and use the resulting force to leap high into the air towards a tree branch overhead. His whip lashed around the branch as he sprang right off of it with the tip of his foot, then swooped down towards Li Qingyu. The dense shroud of black shadows left by his cracking whip enveloped the after images entirely. That's kind of a cool image to think about. Before he'd reached Li Qingyu, his true chi and the mass of the whip shadows swallowed everything. Regardless of which after image was the true one, Li Qingyu had to forcibly break through the bulwark Duan Wenyang had constructed in order to return to the offensive. Bulwark. All right, here's our first search it up of the day. Bulwark. I'm going to guess just like net or trap, but I'm intrigued enough. Bulwark. Yep. Definition. A defensive wall, an extension of a ship's sides above the levels of a deck. The ships met, their crews lining the bulwarks. Okay. So, although the noun bulwark can refer to any fortified wall, it often specifically refers to an earthen wall like a rampart. The verb bulwark means to fortify with a wall or to provide protection. That's pretty cool. Yep, you're right, Truffle. It's sometimes part of a fortress. Nice. Here's our fun fact of the day, or our new word for the day. Bulwark. Bulwark Duan Wenyang had constructed in order to return to the offensive. Duan Wenyang's true chi and inner cultivation were exactly the same as the impression he left on others. Willful and carefree, but strong and imperious as well. It seemed to be everywhere at once, yet it was also like a precipice of sheer ice, immovably solid, or an antelope suspended high in midair, leaving no tracks to be found. There was nowhere it couldn't enter, and no method that could ward or guard against it. His true chi ripped the courtyard's leaves from their branches, drawing them into a vortex that swirled around the two fighters, engulfing them entirely and leaving the rest unable to see how the battle progressed. It was impossible to tell what kind of emotions those two had now, but the observers were incredibly anxious. The members of Chunyang Monastery knew Li Qingyu wasn't an easy mark, but they still feared that something unforeseen might happen, especially Shen Qiao. He'd fought Duan Wenyang himself, so no one understood Duan Wenyang's power more than him. Whether Ashidi could win this battle or not was still uncertain. If Duan Wenyang defeated Li Qingyu, it was unlikely that anyone else present could match him. If that happened, then whether or not Duan Wenyang could take away Su Wei's cousin and her husband wasn't the main problem. Once the news got out, the Gokturks' prestige would grow further, and the Central Plains' morale would diminish. This, too, was probably why Duan Wenyang had chosen to launch an attack today. Alright, that's all serious and I know, but how much would it suck to be Su Wei's cousin right now? It's like, yeah. It sucks that they'd take him away. But, big picture, this would happen. Like, I get it. Big picture. But, like, still, it's just like, ouch. Just as Su Wei's thoughts were spiraling, the leaves whirled around the two combatants froze, and then drifted to the ground, one after another. The two of them stood face to face. Li Qingyu was still where he had been, but the sword that had been in his hand lay a short distance away, while Duan Wenyang's whip was still firmly grasped in his hand. There was nothing strange in their complexions, and no visible hint of injuries on either. Li Qingyu's expression was blank. Duan Wenyang's looked the same as before. Seeing this, the crowd was a bit confused. Then Duan Wenyang let out a boisterous laugh and spoke first. Oh, God, what laugh did I say? I'll just do that one. Li Gonzi's fame is indeed well-deserved to achieve the echelon of sword intent at such a young age. Your future accomplishments will surely be boundless. This Duan willingly admits defeat. Li Qingyu said slowly, My skill is inferior. There's nothing I can say. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. They looked at Duan Wenyang, then looked back at Li Qingyu. One admitted defeat, while the other said his skill was inferior. Exactly who had won and who had lost? Duan Wenyang laughed. Ha 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 ha! I came here for a family and never thought I'd get the chance to spar with the most prestigious rising star of the day. This trip wasn't a waste. Oh, you totally knew he was going to be here. Don't pretend. Shai Xiang broke in. If Duan Xiang still wishes to continue, the Liqing Chuang Academy is willing to keep you occupied as well. Duan Wenyang looked all around him, then clasped his hands behind his back. And what can Li Chuan Academy do? He said arrogantly. You can't defeat me. Let Ruyan Qihuai himself come instead. I heard that many great heroes have gathered here. Li Chuan Academy, Chu Yang Monastery, the Liu He Guild, all illustrious martial sects and organizations of the Central Plains. Full of respect and admiration, I paid you an official visit, but it seems your fame is ill-deserved, and the rumors full of exaggeration. Of everyone here today, only Li Gonzi is worthy of being my opponent. The rest are merely mediocre. He then paused before continuing. I almost forgot. There's also sect leader Shen. Your prowess might have been a little better than theirs, but that was only before you lost to my Shidi. The current Shen Qiao is just a toothless tiger. You people of the Central Plains have a saying. Something like, even dogs can push around a tiger in the plains. You can't return to Xuandu Mountain with the state you're in, and you're forced to rely on sect leader Yan's protection. You're below even a stray dog. If I were you, I'd have done something to myself out of shame long ago. You know what he said. How could I still have the face to live in this world? Although there was a smile on his face, his expression as he looked at Shen Qiao was incomparably cold and indifferent. It was very obvious that, in his eyes, Shen Qiao was no longer a potential opponent, but some insignificant passerby, or even trash. Puliuru Jian felt that if he had been the one to suffer this kind of public humiliation, he couldn't have endured it. But Shen Qiao only stood there meek and docile, head and lashes lowered. It was as if he'd heard nothing, or like he'd fallen asleep standing up. While this level of forbearance and restraint drew admiration, it also elicited contempt. Shai Xiang could remain indifferent to the mocking Duan Wenyang directed at Shen Qiao, but not to him, all but calling Lin Chuan Academy worthless. He couldn't pretend that he hadn't heard how Duan Wenyang had spoken, as if only Chun Yang Monastery was worthy enough to be his opponent, and everyone else was completely beneath him. He gave a derisive laugh about to interrupt. Duan Wenyang, said Sue, you used our mother's birthday banquet as your personal training ground. You've made more than enough mess already. Since you came as a representative of the Empress, I must report what happened today to His Majesty so that he may deal with you. Now I ask you to leave this place immediately. Duan Wenyang laughed. I received Li Gonzi's advice with the sword intent today, so I'm satisfied. I was already planning to leave anyway, with or without the Duke of Meiyang County's orders. I look forward to meeting you again. Saying this, he turned right around to leave, and Shai Xiang couldn't take it any longer. Halt! Lin Chuan Academy's Shai Xiang asked to receive Duan Xiang's guidance. Before he had even finished speaking, his sword had left his sheath. His body transformed into a sweeping arc as he flew towards Duan Wenyang. But it seemed Duan Wenyang had predicted his move. Without even turning his head, he propelled himself upward with a tap of his foot and lit on the roof. Then he vanished completely, leaving only a long string of laughter behind him. Ha 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 ha! I understand that Shai Longjun wishes to use me to achieve fame, but please excuse me for not wanting to keep you company, he said. Let's leave it until after you achieve sword intent too. Ha ha! Without a target, Shai Xiang could only sheath his sword and ground himself once more, glaring hatefully in the direction where Duan Wenyang had vanished. From the sidelines, a person called out in alarm. Li Gonzi, are you all right? Everyone hastily turned their heads towards the sound of that voice. Li Qingyu had pulled out a handkerchief, already stained with a mouthful of bloody foam. He shook his head and said, "I'm fine. I suffered some minor internal injuries. A couple days of recuperation will be enough." Only then did everyone else understand what he'd meant by my skill was inferior just then. But if even someone like Li Qingyu, who'd achieved sword intent, wasn't his match, then exactly how terrifying was Duan Wenyang's martial prowess? Could he be the second coming of Hulugu? With this on their minds, they looked helplessly at each other with horror. Shai Xiang's heart fell too. He'd thought himself fairly talented. The opponents he encountered while traveling the Jianghu for years had given him the illusion, one that told him that even if he couldn't make the top 10 just yet, he wasn't far. But all of a sudden, those experts had popped up one after the other. First, there was Li Qingyu, who'd already achieved sword intent. Then there was Duan Wenyang, who's even stronger than Li Qingyu. Once Shai Xiang had thought himself capable of anything in the Jianghu, that he could conquer even its tumultuous tides. Yet in that very Jianghu, the young replaced the old, and every mountain loomed higher than the previous. Part of me just feels like that's kind of like teenagers like figuring out some of life's realities, like their first, not even their first failure necessarily, but like that first time where they like really get hit by a reality check where it's like, oh shit, this is what it means like to face consequences. Like not exactly, but like that feels very teenager, young adult realization right there. Definitely the going from no fear, I can take on the whole world to, oh boy, I am a tiny fish in a little pond and I just accidentally went out to sea. Like I hopped over thinking like, haha, I can definitely handle this, and I jumped into the ocean. Whoops! While Shai Xiang grew dispirited, Li Qingyu approached Shen Qiao, Sect leader Shen. "The Shen is no longer the sect leader," said Shen Qiao. "Li Gonzi need not address me as such." Li Qingyu ignored him and continued. "I've already achieved the echelon of sword intent, yet I'm still a bit inferior to Duan Wenyang. Does this mean his Shidi, Kunyi, is even stronger than him?" Shen Qiao shook his head. "Though Kunyi's martial prowess is notable, he is not on Duan Wenyang's level. Chief Ingwei was the world's #1, and I greatly admired him for his martial prowess and magnificence," said Li Qingyu. "And yet, sect leader Shen, his direct successor, couldn't even defeat Kunyi." Shen Qiao was silent. Li Qingyu released a quiet sigh. "When you were born, I was not. When I was born, you were already old. I regret that I wasn't able to witness the glory of Chief Ingwei's martial arts firsthand, and when I still believe that Xuandu Mountain had worthy successors. It's a pity, such a pity." Though his expression was as mild as before, when he spoke of pity, one could hear resigningly sincere disappointment in his voice. What an asshole thing to say. Like, I get it, you're hot shit right now, but like, kind of a dick move, my man. This was a man who'd completely dedicated himself to martial arts. He would never look down on the untalented or on those who'd failed to study beneath a good master. But as Li Qingyu saw it, Shen Qiao had both innate talent and a perfect environment far beyond others, and yet he'd still come to this. Everybody just be roasting Shen Qiao. Not only did he look down on Shen Qiao, he also bore against him a faint anger, born of disenchantment. To be fair, Shen Qiao has not mentioned anything about the fact that, hey, I got poisoned. Like, it was not a fair fight. But that's also because Shen Qiao is like, it wouldn't matter. Like, they wouldn't believe me, one, and it wouldn't matter at this point. It's one part that bugs me, though, when people don't even say anything about issues like this. First, he'd taken Duan Wenyang's contempt, and now it was Li Qingyu's lamentations, not to mention the dubious stares of the crowd around them. Anyone with pride would be wearing an ugly expression by now if they hadn't flown into a rage instead. They'd lack the face to stick around. But Shen Qiao could endure what others could not. Yeah, you can. Or perhaps he wasn't enduring at all. He remained as stolid and unyielding as ever, his expression unchanged, and even nodded his head in agreement with Li Qingyu. My master was indeed extraordinarily magnificent. Few people could compare. It's a pity Li Gonzi wasn't able to meet his esteemed self at least once. Li Gonzi's peerless talent would doubtlessly have received my master's praise. In spite of everything, he could say such a thing. Even Tuyuhun Jian could only admire Shen Qiao's self-restraint and the way he brushed aside the criticism leveled at him. It seemed that Li Qingyu didn't expect such reaction from Shen Qiao either. You are a great man, so why must you dance with that demon and debase yourself? By demon, he of course meant Yan Wuxi. Shen Qiao had been a proper, upright leader of a Taoist sect, yet he'd fallen so far that he'd involve himself with a demon like Yan Wuxi. Of course it looked like debasement to an outsider. But although the Jianghu's groups and organizations saw Yan Wuxi as the leader of a demonic sect, he was also the junior preceptor of the crown prince, personally appointed by the emperor himself. Tuyuhun Jian's brows wrinkled, and before Shen Qiao had said anything, he spoke up first. Li Gonzi has incredible skill indeed, and Jian admires you greatly. However, the greater one's talents are, the more modest and open-minded one should be. Shen Langjun is in poor health, and he's never offended you, so why must this distinguished master act so aggressively? As someone from a prestigious sect, do you not find such conduct dishonorable? Li Qingyu shot Tuyuhun Jian a glance and said nothing. He didn't make to stay either, and instead turned away to leave. Sui stopped him. First he bowed, then said in a loud voice, Today's banquet was ruined due to an uninvited guest, and this was our Su family's fault. I thank everyone for your courage in actively supporting and defending us. My brother is injured, so we must end the banquet prematurely. Wei apologizes to everyone for this and promises that we will resume another day. He asks for your forgiveness. No one could have predicted what happened that day. Naturally, no one blamed the hosts. Instead, they offered their condolences, one after another. Some of the nobles, who were close family friends, even discussed with him how to submit a memorial to the emperor for the impending complaint. Some guests took their leave, trickling out while one of Madam Qin's maids led Li Qingyu to the back of the residence for treatment and rest. Tuyuhun Jian said to Shen Qiao, Shen Qiang, let's go as well. Shen Qiao nodded, but he hadn't gotten yet a word out when something else ensued. As I was leaving just now, something occurred to me. Since you're unwilling to hand over Yuan Xiang and his wife, then I'll invite over the madam as a guest. Let me see whom you value more, your mother or your cousin. It was a voice traveling in from afar, its sound bright and incomparably clear, as if he was speaking right next to each listener's ear. Such a high level of sound displacement was even more difficult to pull off than sound transmission technique. Letters? Oh, from the people. Like, dude, what the heck, man? Yeah, that would have been interesting to see the actual emperor's response and letters. Sui and Su Qiao's faces were distorted by fear. Sui was a scholar through and through, lacking even enough strength to truss a chicken, while Su Qiao had just suffered a harsh loss to Duan Wenyang. His right hand was still completely immobilized, but he couldn't spare a thought for it, and he leapt, throwing himself to where his mother was. But before he could even get close, he was suddenly tossed in the opposite direction, landing heavily on the ground. The others couldn't even see how he'd been injured. No one had expected Duan Wenyang to return so soon after he'd left. But of course, he'd never promised to drop his request for Yuan Xiang and his wife. He must have planned this long in advance and not retreated too far away in the first place. At this kind of critical moment, it would be mere empty, useless talk to condemn him for resorting to such underhanded and shameless tactics. Regardless of whether it was the Jianghu or the court or even the shifting powers of the world, it was dog eat dog. Might makes right. Whoever punched the hardest got the final say. So the moment Shen Qiao was sent flying, Li Qingyu, Do Yanshan, and Shai Xiang took action as one, all trying to stop Duan Wenyang. These men were the cream of the crop in the Jianghu at present. If there was a gap between them and the top 10, it was a small one. Li Qingyu, for example, was likely already qualified to enter the top 10 ranks, even if he'd been slightly inferior to Duan Wenyang during their duel just moments ago. But if all three of them attacked as a group, there was no reason that they should fail. But they miscalculated. Duan Wenyang didn't go for Madam Qin. Instead, he'd switched targets halfway through and went straight for Su Wei. Madam Qin had been a disciple under Hulugu in her youth. Even if she hadn't fought for many years, her martial skills were likely quite sound. But Su Wei was different. The Duke of Meiyang County was not but a scholar, and he didn't know a lick of martial arts. Duan Wenyang's movements were direct and agile, totally unhesitating. He must have been fainting earlier. This was his plan all along. The group was already half a step behind, and now, with a flap of his sleeve, Duan Wenyang sent out a palm strike that impeded them for another moment. By the time they were ready to attack again, Duan Wenyang's fingers were already touching Su Wei's neck. Even if they'd been godly immortals, there was no way they could rescue him in time. Shen Qiao cried out helplessly in alarm, "Xiangxing!" Madam Qin's complexion twisted as she snarled, "Don't touch my son!" Then suddenly, Duan Wenyang made a sound of surprise. It wasn't because of Shen Qiao and Madam Qin's shouts, and it certainly wasn't because Li Qingyu and the others had somehow made it to him in time. A bamboo cane had come out of nowhere, cutting him off squarely from the front. Duan Wenyang instinctively reached out to push it aside, but somehow the cane slipped from his grasp time and again, as impossible to catch as a mudfish, and leaving him no room to apply proper force. True chi spread from the cane's movements in overlapping ripples, and though it wasn't crushing, it was powerfully persistent. Duan Wenyang was forced to temporarily abandon Su Wei and devote his attention to this new, unexpected opponent. When he finally got a good look at who his opponent was, his shock showed starkly on his face, about to brim over. Dude, what if I just ended it right there? That would be so mean. I will not, but that'd be kind of funny. It'd be really mean. All right, chapter 34. Come on, pen, you can write. 131, we'll say 30. And I also love Shen Qiao being an absolute menace with that bamboo cane. Annika, I agree. All right, chapter 34. Shen Qiao Strikes, Part 2. Shen Qiao's eyes were still gently closed, his face tranquil like placid waters. To an observer, it would seem that the bamboo cane in his hands moved completely arbitrarily, hitting wherever it wished with no pattern to speak of. Yeah, cane fighting would be so cool, I agree. To the observer, it would seem that the bamboo cane in his hands moved completely arbitrarily, hitting wherever it wished with no pattern to speak of. But it was exactly the disorder in these attacks that made Duan Wenyang wary. With his expression even graver than when he'd faced Li Qingyu, he exchanged 100 blows with Shen Qiao in an instant. They fought from the ground to the rooftops, then from the rooftops to the trees, light and shadow dancing across their figures as they flitted about, at times restrained and at other times brutal. The speed at which they struck and parried was astounding. Anyone whose martial arts was even slightly lacking were unable to discern their moves. And so far, Shen Qiao showed no signs of falling behind. Now that Duan Wenyang was unable to pay attention to them, the Su family servants hastily came up and surrounded Su Wei to protect him. Su Qiao bid them to take his mother and brother back inside the house, while he himself remained standing outside despite the pain. The more everyone watched, the more astonished they became, and the most astonished was none other than Duan Wenyang. When Shen Qiao had failed to react to Duan Wenyang and Li Qingyu's taunts, it came as no surprise to anyone. For Duan Wenyang wasn't the only one who thought that Shen Qiao's current state meant he was already half ruined. Fame could be rebuilt, but recovering his martial arts would be very difficult, and without it, he had no place in the Jianghu. If he was forced to rely on others for protection, then no matter how powerful that protector was, Shen Qiao was no better than trash in the eyes of Duan Wenyang and the rest. Anyone had the right to look down on him. And yet, it was this trash who accomplished what almost everybody else had failed to do. He'd not only stopped Duan Wenyang, he even fought him to a draw. Just then, many of those watching couldn't help but think. In the end, the sect leader of Xuandu Mountain was the sect leader of Xuandu Mountain. The title of world's #1 Taoist sect was mostly flattery, but Shen Qiao hadn't been chosen as Qi Fenggui's successor without reason. That being said, if he was on par with Duan Wenyang, how had he lost that duel to Kunyi and ended up in such a state? Was there some hidden story within? Yes. That being said, if he was on par with Duan Wenyang, how had he lost that I already read that. As chaotic thoughts flashed through everyone's mind, they stared unswervingly at the duel before them, afraid to miss even a single second. The fight was just as marvelous as the match with Li Qingyu had been before. However, inside the circle of battle, things weren't as effortless for Shen Qiao as the spectators believed. In truth, Duan Wenyang was indeed very strong, and his martial abilities were definitely above Kunyi's. Both were irrefutable. There were a couple of reasons that Shen Qiao had been able to hold on for so long. First, he still had half of his martial power as a base. Second, Duan Wenyang had been injured during his fight with Li Qingyu. And third, Xuandu Mountain's martial arts complemented the 8 trigrams Zai Wu, Dao Shu, and even various forms of astrology. The result was exquisite and unpredictable. Because he'd never encountered it before, Duan Wenyang lost the initiative and was swept along. The fight was splendid to watch. Duan Wenyang sent out lash after lash of his whip, and the strikes as devastating and unstoppable as lightning. Unyielding, domineering true Qi hammered at Shen Qiao with every curving slash of the whip, weighing him down. The pressure on Shen Qiao grew and grew. He was like a piece of fragile porcelain, beautiful yet on the verge of breaking, and unable to withstand another blow. A sharp crack sounded. The bamboo cane was snapped in half. Dun, dun, dun! Li Qingyu immediately tossed the Chu Shi Chu Shui sword he held to Shen Qiao. Catch. Using only his ears to discern its direction, Shen Qiao caught it firmly in hand without even turning his head. Sword sheath swept downward, slicing into the wall of Duan Wenyang's whips after images with perfect accuracy. Like a mountain-felling earthquake or the rapids of 1,000 ravines engulfing the dikes, the sword sheath screamed forth, completely unstoppable. Duan Wenyang's expression flickered as he was forced to relent and retreat. The whip's magnitude of afterimages vanished and were replaced by a single arc of white light. The white light wasn't sword chi because it lacked both form and substance. It also didn't feel like true chi. It fluttered and flowed, the body as limber as a cloth ribbon. But it also rushed after Duan Wenyang like a shadow, as if it had a mind of its own. It chased him relentlessly, unwilling to let up for a single second. What is that? Is that also sword chi? Zan Zaiqian asked in astonishment. No, it's sword intent. The one who answered was his Shidi, Shai Xiang. Then why does it look different from what Li Qingyu used earlier? Li Qingyu's sword intent was formless, but this one has form. The formless surpasses the form, Zan Ziqian said. So Li Qingyu is a level above him? A sword's intentions are formless by nature, said Shai Xiang. So how can the formless surpass the form tier? If he's capable of creating a sword intent with form, that means he's already grasped the essence of the sword and is close to the echelon of sword heart. Understanding dawned on Zan Ziqian, and his good opinion of Shen Qiao transformed into fervent admiration. Duan Wenyang retreated dozens of steps in a single go, but the white sword intent lost not a hint of its edge, despite its soft and pliable appearance. It gave relentless chase, determined to capture him. The sword intent and the whip's fall met. And though the sword was made of the skin of southern sea crocodiles, cured with dozens of herbs, the sword intent sliced a section of it clean off. Duan Wenyang's expression shifted. From his palm, he sent a forceful blast towards the sword intent. Like sky and water meeting, where the mist churned from the cliffs, the waterfalls cascading into the river like bands of silk, that boundless white shattered into chaos, and all was thrown into confusion. An enormous, tangible wave rolled in all directions. Everyone reeled back in alarm at the sight of it, and only after they'd taken a great many steps did they realize that the deluge had not been a pure wave, but rather residual sword intent in the shape of one. The crowd returned to their senses, but a chilly sensation of moisture lingered on their skin, a testimony to the power of the sword intent. Zan Ziqian found it fascinating and couldn't resist wiping at his face. Of course, nothing came away with his hand, but Shai Xiang said, "That's because he hasn't completely realized a fully formed sword intent yet. If it had been perfected, there's no guarantee us onlookers would have come away unscathed." Zan Ziqian always admired his Shidi's insight. Right away, he asked, "It seems his internal cultivation and true chi aren't in complete harmony with his sword intent. Why is that?" Shai Xiang made a sound of agreement, his gaze still lingering on the battle. "He's probably suffering from an old injury, so his internal cultivation is greatly diminished. Even if he's achieved sword intent, he can't wield it to its fullest extent. I fear he won't last much longer." Zan Ziqian quickly looked back towards Shen Qiao. He had a good opinion of Shen Qiao, so he didn't want him to lose. But within the overlapping afterimages of sword intent and whip, it was very difficult to discern how the combatants were holding up. Duan Wenyang was getting tired. He'd lost part of his whip, and he'd been injured during his previous duel with Li Qingyu. long ago began to regret underestimating Shen Qiao. Though he was a little lacking in terms of internal energy, his sword intent was overwhelmingly powerful. No matter how excellent Duan Wenyang's internal cultivation was, he couldn't keep expending his ki without pause. When he saw Shen Qiao's sword intent blaze all the brighter, heralding another powerful attack, he immediately lost all desire to carry on fighting. He withdrew and sped away, all while laughing. Sect leader Shen's reputation is well deserved. I fear I don't have the time today. I shall seek your guidance another time. Farewell! No one could stop him from leaving. Although he'd been born in the Khaganate, his Qigong skill was exceptional, and his movements unfamiliar and perplexing. No one present could identify the source of his technique. Shen Qiao didn't give chase. He was the only person who had fought both Kun Yi and Duan Wenyang. Kun Yi was indeed a skilled fighter, but he would have lost their duel at Bamboo Peak if Shen Qiao hadn't fallen for that poisoning scheme. But Duan Wenyang was different. Shen Qiao might have lost most of his martial arts, but his insight was still intact. He was astonished by how frightening an opponent Duan Wenyang was. Though he'd appeared to have the upper hand during their duel, he hadn't been able to probe the depths of Duan Wenyang's abilities. Shen Qiao had been flagging like an arrow nearing the end of its fight, and if they'd carried on fighting, he would have lost. He would have certainly lost. Yet at that very moment, Duan Wenyang had chosen to retreat. As he stood in place, catching his breath, Shen Qiao realized that manifesting his formed sword intent had cost him more than half of his true qi. His body was terribly weak. Okay. One of the leaves fell. And it just made a crinkling noise. I was making sure we didn't have another mouse situation. His body was terribly weak, and it was arduous even to walk normally. He could do nothing but smile bitterly to himself. Li Qingyu walked up to him. Sect leader Shen. Shen Qiao took the opportunity to offer Chu Shui back to him. Thank you, Li Gonzi, for lending me your sword. It's an excellent blade, but unfortunately this Shen disgraced it with his inadequacy. Yeah, we had one in one of our earlier streams. I think you were there, Truffle, but yeah. We tend to get them more around winter as they're coming in from the cold, but we try to keep them out. I at least don't really keep food around here, but you can only do what you can do. Does keep you on your toes, though. Sometimes literally. Thank you, Li Gonzi, for lending me your sword. It's an excellent blade, but unfortunately this Shen disgraced it with his inadequacy. Li Qingyu took the proffered blade. I misspoke just now. Don't take it to heart. Speaking humbly was obviously something rare for him. Even his apology came out a bit cold and stiff. Shen Qiao smiled. You're being too courteous, Li Gonzi. If you hadn't lent me the sword just then, I fear I'd be lying dead in the courtyard now. Can hear them scurrying around in the drop ceiling in my basement. I've kind of given up at this point. We've been at that point once upon a time too, and it took a long time to only get the occasional mouse now and again that came in for the winter. So, don't lose hope, Annika. As his eyes became capable of vaguely making out the world around him, he'd gradually developed the habit of squinting at people and objects. And so, although his eyes were as spiritless as before, when beneath the sun they seemed to take on a brimming shine, those who saw him this way couldn't help but lament. Yeah. I'm not even going to say how many we captured. We had a situation there was, I'm not going to get into it, but no, been there, Truffle, and it's hard getting rid of mice. Because you're never really truly rid of mice. But yes. Li Qingyu stared at him for a moment. If you have nowhere to go, he said suddenly, Chunyang Monastery can provide you with a place to live. You need not lower yourself to depend on others, and especially not on people you dislike. Nearby, Su Qiao was astonished to overhear this offer. Everyone in Chunyang Monastery knew of Ishidi's cold and steely disposition, and that he cared only for martial arts. Perhaps he felt a bit of warmth towards his master and fellow disciples, but that was pretty much all. Su Qiao himself had never heard of Li Qingyu softening his words for anyone, let alone inviting someone to stay at Chunyang Monastery. Yet here he was, treating a complete stranger like Shen Qiao with such regard. Shen Qiao also seemed somewhat surprised. He froze for a second, then smiled in answer. Thank you for your kindness, Li Gonzi. He thanked him, but hadn't specified whether it was necessary. That meant a refusal. They were just two strangers who'd met by chance. They had little relationship with each other. Shen Qiao didn't want his affairs to cause Chunyang Monastery trouble. Li Qingyu nodded and said no more. Taking his sword, he left. Though no one had said it aloud, in their hearts they'd all looked down on this downtrodden former sect leader. But now, after Shen Qiao and Duan Wenyang's duel, such thoughts had been banished like smoke. Yes, Shen Qiao had the advantage of fighting the second round, but if he hadn't taken action, who else could have stopped Duan Wenyang? And who could claim that they would force Duan Wenyang to withdraw? Madam Qin came over, supported by her maids. She bowed deeply to Shen Qiao, as did Su Wei and Su Qiao. Thank you, Sect Leader Shen, she said, for saving my son in time. Please accept this old woman's respects. Shen Qiao hurried to stop her. The madam need not be so courteous. Duan Wenyang returned and took the Duke of Meiyang County hostage. This was most dishonorable of him. As a guest in your residence, of course it's my duty to lend my support. Regardless, from this day onward, you are the Su family's great benefactor, said Madam Qin. Our doors will always be open to you. If Shen Xiansheng has any requests, our Su family will do its absolute best to fulfill them. Technically, he just, saved the main heir, I think it is, so, I can definitely see why that's being offered, yeah. The Su family might not have been able to do very much, but even so, Madam Qin's sincere gratitude shone clearly in her fervent promise. The birthday banquet had been forced to come to an end with Duan Wenyang's interference. Everyone had arrived with their spirits high and now left with them low. Puliuru Jian walked out of the manor with Shen Qiao and invited him to visit his home at a later date. Then he said his farewells and went on his way. Shen Qiao was about to get into the carriage, but Zan Ziqian called after him. Please wait, Shen Langjun. He bowed with clasped hands and then asked, I wanted to speak to you earlier, but couldn't find the chance. Please grant me one request. What's the matter? Is something serious? Asked Shen Qiao curiously. Zan Ziqian smiled. I want to ask if you'll let me paint you. Paint me? Asked Shen Qiao. Exactly, said Zan Ziqian. I've always loved painting, and my favorite subjects are gods and immortals, but though this world has all manner of people in it, where would one find a real god or an immortal? But then I saw Shen Langjun. Out of everyone, you're the closest to my heart's ideal. That's why I wanted to ask if you'll be my model. Shen Qiao had heard all kinds of strange requests, but this was the first time someone had asked to paint him. For a moment, he didn't know how to react or reply. Before Zan Ziqian could try to convince him further, Zai Xiang, Shai Xiang walked over. Please don't be offended, Shen Langjun. My Shixian is obsessed with painting, so this is normal. He cupped his hands, then grabbed Zan Ziqian's arms, making to leave. Zan Ziqian yelped a few times, but he couldn't overpower Shai Xiang. He could only keep calling out to Shen Qiao. Shen Langjun, please don't rush to leave the capital. The Zan will definitely find a day to come visit. I kind of love it that he's like, you're so beautiful, you're perfect. Please let me paint you. We love a fellow stan. Oh, I could just see him getting dragged away, like, wait, let me paint you. He really does keep attracting people. At least his life's not boring, right? He wishes it was more boring. Shen Qiao shook his head and burst out laughing, then turned back and stepped into the carriage. I bet he'd have a great laugh. Like, ha 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 ha. He fished out a handkerchief and coughed a mouthful of blood into it, his expression quickly turning heavy with fatigue. The injuries his sword intent had inflicted on Duan Wenyang would probably take half a month to heal, but he hadn't walked away unscathed either. His vitality and qi were damaged. He'd only been forcing himself to look unaffected. Shai Xiang must have realized, and so he'd stopped Zan Ziqian from detaining him any longer. That, or he was just embarrassed that his friend was, like, requesting to paint the dude that just beat up the big bad. And was being very enthusiastic. He was like, dude, you're being embarrassing. Like, come on, man. Let's go. It was kind of him to think he'd noticed. Yan Wuxi always loved luxury, and his subordinates always catered to his taste, so the inside of the carriage was comfortable and lavishly decorated. Shen Qiao asked the coachman to return to the junior preceptor's residence. Then, no longer needing to conceal his condition, he leaned against the carriage wall. His expression was steeped with exhaustion, his eyebrows slightly furrowed. Unknowingly, he drifted off. His fatigue was extreme, so he fell into a deep sleep, completely dead to the world. When he woke, he found the wheels of the carriage beneath him still clattering away as they rolled, and his heart sank a little. He lifted the carriage curtain and looked out. Faintly, he could see that they were already outside the city and driving through the outskirts. In short, this was definitely not the way back to the junior preceptor's residence. Lao Wei, is that you? No one answered, but the carriage slowed before coming to a complete stop. The driver looked back. Though the clothes were still Lao Wei's, the face was not. It was fair and pretty, the cheeks dimpled even when no smile graced them. Hello, Bairong. Even though he couldn't see the driver well, the moment they spoke, Shen Qiao knew who they were. Say, I'm not the only one who thinks so, but the Sioux residence's security is far too lax. I simply put on Lao Wei's clothing, donned a hat, and as long as I mimicked his voice a little, they didn't suspect a thing. There wasn't even any need to change my face. Anyone could have gone in and out of a place like that. You helped them drive Duan Wenyang off, but you won't be able to do it a second time. Where's Lao Wei? Asked Shen Qiao. Bairong, kidnapping is not the way to someone's heart. I bet there's a story where it is, but not in this one. Bairong pouted. Why is sect leader Shen only concerned about some old man when there's this great beauty right before you? Where's your concern for me? Dead. Of course I killed him. Shen Qiao smiled. I misspoke. That question was unnecessary. With your cleverness, you wouldn't risk provoking Yan Wuxi over a mere coachman. Byron giggled. When I can kidnap the likes of you, what's a coachman? Do you mean you're afraid I won't tell you the truth? Fine, fine, telling you is of no consequence. Indeed, I have no interest in killing a nobody like that. I knocked him out and left him in the Sioux family stable. Whether he lives or dies is his business, not my problem if he gets trampled. But still, Yan Wuxi doesn't treat you well at all. He knows of your frail health, of how you'll cough up blood and pass out at the drop of a hat. Yet still, he only sent a coachman with you? Did he see this coming? Shen Qiao shook his head. My relationship with Yan Wuxi isn't what you think it is. You need not keep trying to provoke me. So why has little Bai Niangzi brought me all the way out here? Suddenly, Bai Rong pressed forward until her warm, scented breaths were only inches away from him. With a slight frown, Shen Qiao involuntarily leaned back, but she reached for him. As his bamboo cane had snapped in the Sioux residence, he had to block her with his bare hands. In an instant, they exchanged dozens of blows. Yeah, at least she only knocked the guy out. Progress. Absolutely progress. Bairong's strikes came at incredible speed, her hands shifting through countless gestures like a flower transforming through life. A bloom blossoming in full before withering, all in the span of one breath. Glory and decline, a lifetime in an instant. However, her peerlessly exquisite blue lotus seals were all blocked by Shen Qiao, as if he'd already anticipated her every move. Every time, he was a little faster than Bai Rong, never early nor late. Bai Rong hadn't witnessed Shen Qiao's fight with Duan Wenyang. Her impression of him was frozen at the feeble, sickly state he'd been in back in Huai province. When she saw him block every single one of the blue lotus seals, she was so proud of. She was utterly thunderstruck. When I heard that you killed my Shixian, I didn't quite believe it, she said. But now it seems it must be true. Have you recovered your martial arts? As she finished asking, Bai Rong dodged a blast from Shen Qiao's palm, then circled behind him and struck his acupoint. Then, without warning, she wrapped her arms around him from behind and stretched forward to peer at his face. To be born with such good looks, even though you're a Taoist priest, you drive us demonic practitioners out of business. You'll drive us demonic practitioners out of business. Saying this, she took the liberty of kissing Shen Qiao on the tip of his nose. Things were moving too fast. With Shen Qiao's vitality so greatly damaged, just meeting her strikes had been hard for him. He hadn't expected this tactic from her at all, and was completely flustered, his face overcome by astonishment. Byron giggled. I wanted to do this from the very first day I saw you. Today I've finally fulfilled my wish. His acupoint was sealed, so he couldn't move. Shen Qiao gave up all meaningless struggle. What do you want? He asked. You killed Huo Shijing and still ask me what I want, said Byron. That guy, Huo Shijing, he was always fawning over Shizun. And Shizun really liked him. Now that he's dead, Shizun's really upset. So he told me to bring you back for him to deal with. All right. Almost done with the chapter, but we have our first picture, I think. I was kind of wondering where we'd have a picture, because I was like, you should have one eventually. She totally is like biting his nose. I know it's kissing, but it kind of looks like she's trying to take a nip of it. The more she looked at him, the more she found Shen Qiao quite becoming. Man or woman, everyone in Hihuan sect was beautiful, but their cultivation of charm techniques, together with their lack of scruples, meant their beauty could never give off that impression of otherworldly aloofness. Yeah, he does look so annoyed, and I don't really blame him either. Poor man keeps getting his acupoints pressed and just paralyzing himself. Poor man. If he who won Sect were the succubi. There we go. I know how it's said. I just was struggling to actually say succubi. Immersed in worldly desires, frolicking around, indulging in the flesh, then Shen Qiao was a godly statue inside a temple, standing high above all else, devoid of both joy and sorrow. But the more heretical someone was, the more they'd want to defile that statue. But now I feel a little reluctant, Bai Rong said gleefully. With your good looks, you'll definitely be tortured if you fall into my Shizun's hands. Even if you don't die, you'll come close. I don't completely remember the contents of Xu Yang's Strategy's volume of deluded thought from our last encounter. If you're willing to recite it for me again so we can compare notes, I'll let you go. I'll go back and tell Shizun I can't beat Sect Leader Yan. How about it? Xuandu Mountain has the Xu Yang Strategies volume of Lost Soul. Since you know I'm Shen Qiao, why not ask me to recite that one for you too? Bai Rong laughed. Do you take me for a fool? I've never heard this volume of Lost Soul. I wouldn't be able to tell even if you scrambled the passages or recited old nonsense. But I remember most of the volume of deluded thought, just not all of it. If you switch things around on me, at least I'll know. And what if I refuse to cooperate? Asked Shen Qiao. Then this one will just have to hand you over to Shizun, Bai Rong said sweetly. Surely you've heard about my Shizun saying Jing Xing. He's many times crueler than my Shixian Huo Shijing. Gender makes no difference to him, and he loves parasitic cultivation the most. So that one is literally harvest and supplement. So this is a practice of draining life energy and chi from a host to strengthen one's martial arts, often associated with sexual cultivation. He also enjoys tormenting people in bed until they're at death's door. I dare not imagine what would happen to a beauty like you should you fall into his grasp. Shen Qiao sighed. You all take me for a fallen tiger in the plains. Someone you can do anything to, as if I'm already caught and my fate is sealed. Do you think I'd just let things go in a situation like this? Even if I won't go around slaughtering people, that doesn't mean I'll allow myself to be slaughtered. Bai Rong startled, but before she could figure out what Shen Qiao meant by that, he'd already moved, his long, slender index finger extended towards her. Springwater's finger technique? How do you know Springwater's finger technique? Her face filled with terror. Bai Rong leapt back. Oh, her Shizun's an absolute delight, Truffle. So lovely. All right. Keep knocking over that. Ay, ay, ay. All right, our last chapter for tonight. Come on, pen. You can do it. There we go. We'll do 206. All right. Chapter 35, Contention. One truly couldn't fault Bai Rong for overreacting. The demonic sex fear of Yan Wuxi ran incredibly deep. Before he'd entered secluded cultivation, Yan Wuxi had taken on all three demonic sects by himself. By his hand, Fa Jing's sect had been half annihilated, and Hehuan's sect suffered devastating losses too. Just a little more, and the unification he sought would have been complete. If it hadn't been for his defeat by Yu Wang, which forced him to recuperate in seclusion, who knew how the three sects would look? Even though his efforts had fallen short, the fear of Yan Wushi's name was etched deeply into the bones of all demonic cultivators. Since she was fairly young, Bai Rong hadn't been strong enough to face him in combat back then. But not long ago, her master had ordered her to assassinate Yan Wushi's eldest disciple, Bian Yan Mei. In a stroke of misfortune, she had encountered Yan Wushi himself, had taken everything she had to escape with her life, an experience which granted her a deep appreciation for the title Demon Lord. If Shen Qiao hadn't been alone today, she never would have risked showing herself. But when she saw Shen Qiao use the spring water's finger technique, the terror from a recent brush with death reared its head once again. Bai Rong dared not meet the approaching finger directly. Instead, she retreated back with a flash. She was unwilling to let the prey she'd bagged fly away, though. Like a river loach, she plastered herself to the wall and slid along it, angling to grab Shen Qiao from behind. But Shen Qiao almost seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. His pointer finger suddenly became a palm strike. His strike was soft and fluttering and absent any force, yet the internal energy contained within it was so relentless and intense that Bai Rong dared not take it lightly. By now, she realized that she'd massively underestimated him. When she'd witnessed Shen Qiao coughing up blood inside the carriage just a short while before, she thought him almost spent. To think he still had so much left in him. And this is only half strength. Bai Rong's palms were lovely and tender, pretty and delicate, and the sight of them should have been enough to soften the heart of any man, make them reluctant to attack. But Shen Qiao was an exception. Because he couldn't see, appearance-based charm techniques had no effect on him. Their palms met, the touch whisper silent and feather light. It was more akin to a Madam's coquettish appeal to her beloved than an exchange of attacks. Bai Rong felt a heavy blow slam into her chest, not chests. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Gritting her teeth, she struck at the carriage with her other hand. The compartment immediately exploded, the walls splintered, and the horse spooked. It galloped forward madly as Shen Qiao leapt into the air, then landed on its back, giving the reins a harsh yank. The crazed horse snorted, but was forced to slow. From behind him came a low sigh. Shen Lang is so gentle and sentimental, unwilling to even harm a horse. I'm a little jealous of sect leader Yan. Reluctant to give up and seeing that Shen Qiao was distracted dealing with the horse, Bai Rong launched herself at him. Her words overflowed with affection, but they didn't blunt the brutality of her attacks in the slightest. She struck at Shen Qiao's back. Even if she crippled him, she thought, it'd be no matter. After all, as long as he drew breath and could speak, he could still recite the volume of deluded thought for her. Shen Qiao heaved a sigh too, but he didn't turn around. Instead, he slid down so that he was against the horse's side. He held the reins with one hand and pressed the horse down with the other, forcing it to kneel on the ground so that it wouldn't end up hurt in the crossfire. Once it was down, he pushed off the ground with a tap of his foot and sent himself flying straight at Bai Rong. Bai Rong had already suffered beneath his hands, so she dared not face him head-on again. She immediately withdrew her palm and vanished into the woods, leaving behind only a string of giggles. Shen Lang is willing to protect even a horse, yet he's so cruel to me. I'll come back to play with you another day. Once he'd made sure she was truly gone, Shen Qiao found he lacked the strength to stay upright. Supporting himself with the horse, he doubled over. His legs gave out, and he dropped to his knees on the ground. Kneeling there, the horse had finally calmed down. It neighed twice and tilted its head at Shen Qiao, looking at him with bright, confused eyes. Everybody in these poor horses, man. Danmei just has it out for horses. Should we count the horse as a service worker? Because it's kind of a little bit of an... injustice of service worker. We have our driver, Lao. One for Lao. And one for the horse. So we're up to 7. Seven injustices to service workers and animals. Justice for the service workers! Shen Qiao patted it gently. I'm sorry for dragging you into this. His words trailed off as blood surged up his throat. He couldn't suppress it. Instinctually, he slapped a hand over his mouth, but the blood trickled out between his fingers. It's okay, Esper Lady. We're actually on our last chapter, so it's up to you if you want to stay and get a little spoiled for, well, thank you. They're kind of funny, but yeah. I made it myself and thought, why not? I might just say, there's some stuff that's really important, so you might want to listen to it yourself. But we're literally like down to the last like 9 pages, 10 pages. But you're welcome to stay. It might just spoil the ending. Like, might be a little out of order. So, okay. Welcome, though. And I totally get the hyper-focusing on a fic. Like, been there many times. Shen Qiao gave up holding it in. His hand went slack and the blood spilled out. When it was done, he raised his sleeve to wipe at the bloodstains around his mouth. Releasing another breath, a spate of dizziness came over him. His ears rang and he staggered, light-headed. All he wanted was to collapse then and there and close his eyes, to not worry about anything ever again. Such a state wasn't foreign to him. Feebleness had overcome him often, ever since he'd been injured. His martial arts were recovering, but even so, his situation didn't improve. Every time he fought, he disturbed his injured meridians time and again, damaging them faster than they could heal. He'd also encountered a bottleneck while cultivating the Shuyang strategy's true qi and hadn't made any progress in a while. By itself, his original internal cultivation from Xuandu Mountain was unable to repair his damaged foundations. Though he could claim he was used to the feeling, it was still agonizing. He was forced to lean against the horse for a brief rest, thinking that he'd get up again after the excruciating dizziness passed. With his current state, it was impossible for him to ride the horse back to the city. But just then, he heard someone speak from a short distance away. Sect leader Shen, have you ever heard of the saying, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware that the oriole stalks it in turn? The voice was neither loud nor quiet, nor was there any swagger to it. It was simply a polite inquiry. It almost sounded as if the speaker was asking for directions instead of issuing a provocation. Shen Qiao didn't open his eyes. Hoarsely, he said, I'm afraid this gentleman's voice is a little unfamiliar to me. I don't think we've met. Yes, this is our first meeting, said the newcomer, unfailingly courteous. I didn't expect Bai Rong to be a step ahead of me. But it's fortunate that she was. Otherwise, I would never have had this wonderful chance. Are you all right? Shen Qiao shook his head. Forgive my rudeness. I can't stand. It's fine, the man said considerately. Despite his words, he didn't move to help Shen Qiao, nor did he leave. Shen Qiao sighed. I still don't know this gentleman's esteemed name. The man laughed. Though we've only just met, I feel as if we're old friends already. I was so lost in my awe that I almost forgot to introduce myself. My last name is Guang, and I come from the west of the Yale River. At the moment, I'm a drifting roamer with no set residence. Guang was a rare last name. The number of people bearing it in the Jianghu could be counted on one hand. What merit does this humble Shen have for someone as esteemed as the Fa Jing sect leader to pay me a personal visit? This humble Guang has admired sect leader Shen for a long time, said Guang Lingshan. Unfortunately, we never had the opportunity to meet before today. When word arrived that sect leader Shen had fallen from the cliff, this Guang was full of lament. I never imagined that I'd get the chance to see you defeat 2 people in a row today. What wondrous fortune. Shen Qiao forced a smile. Enough with the flowery words, sect leader Guang. If you have something to say, say it. For I fear I won't last much longer before I pass out. Then I won't be able to hear anything you wanted to say. Guang Lingshan didn't need to experience it himself to know that Shen Qiao must be in excruciating agony. Seeing that Shen Qiao could still manage to chat and laugh, his respect for him grew. Sect leader Yan took something from Fa Jing's sect, he told Shen Qiao. Even now, he has yet to return it, so I have no choice but to invite sect leader Shen for a stay at Fa Jing's sect. Then I fear you've miscalculated, said Shen Qiao. All I do for sect leader Yan is waste his food. A pair of his chopsticks are probably more valuable than I am. Even speaking one sentence exhausted a great deal of his strength. After he forced the words out, he closed his eyes, his brows furrowing. His complexion was ghastly white, and he looked as if he might pass away at any moment. Guang Lingshan was also afraid that Shen Qiao might suddenly die. He reached out, wanting to check his pulse and pass him some qi. He hadn't yet touched Shen Qiao's wrist when he jerked and then retreated dozens of meters. A shallow ditch had appeared in the ground where Guang Lingshan had been standing just a moment before. Outsiders all say that sect leader Yan brought the injured sect leader Shen back in order to humiliate him and make him a plaything. It looks like they might be wrong, Guang Lingshan said, all smiles. It's been so long, and sect leader Yan's splendor has only grown. Yan Wuxi glanced at Shen Qiao, who seemed to have either fainted or fallen asleep. His arms hung limply, a stretch of blood stained the ends of his sleeve, and his eyes were closed. He was completely unconscious. Yan Wuxi swiveled his gaze back to Guang Lingshan. In my years of absence, Hihuan sect crushed Fa Jing's sect so badly that you couldn't even remain in the Central Plains and were forced to retreat to Tuyuhun. What an incompetent sect leader you are. Naturally, I'm not as capable as sect leader Yan, said Guang Lingshan. So there's a huge typo up here. So in this sentence it says, Yan Wuxi swiveled his gaze back to Guang Lingshan. And then, I was like, wait a minute. It's Lingshan. But then also, Lingshan. They have an H in here. Huh. Lingshan. Naturally, I'm not as capable as sect leader Yan, said Guang Lingshan. You've even got the sect leader of Xuandu Mountain and to use as a bed warmer and a host for parasitic cultivation. You can even use him to test your martial arts. That's 3 birds with 1 stone. Everyone else is just jealous that they'll never have anything similar. At first, I wanted to borrow him for a couple days, but I didn't expect that sect leader Yan valued him so much that you'd rush over here at top speed. I once had a book with a whole missing chapter. Oh my goodness, don't even get me started about the MTLs. I have read so many books where it's like, I think the chapters are not in order. And then it was like, no, I know the chapters are not in order. That's crazy. What book? I'm just out of curiosity, what book had a whole chapter missing? Wow. Guangling San was dressed as a scholar and had been born with his gentle and refined looks, but his words were completely unreserved and archetypal of the demonic sex. Really? I wouldn't expect that big of a whoopsie for heaven official's blessing for official edition. Well, someone messed up there. Kind of makes me wonder about what the printing process is, if it could just do that with one whole page. Like, do they do chapter by chapter? And I'm getting off task. That's kind of cool. Like, I'd almost want to keep it if I could. It's a chapter where everything, of course it was. It's both really cool and that, like, you had that happen, but also just like, come on. Remember, one of the Fourth Wing books had entire pages cut or smudged or upside down in the official editions. I kind of love finding, like, the misprints like that. I think they're so fascinating. Like, same thing with Pokemon cards. Like, when it's, like, kind of off or wonky. I think it's so cool. It could be frustrating if you were, like, in the middle and it was a new release and you couldn't, like, fix it that way. But, like, I'd be, like, kind of like, oh, it's special. That's kind of cool. Okay, back to the book. Guangling San was dressed as a scholar and had been born with his gentle and refined looks, but his words were completely unreserved and archetypal of the demonic sex. I heard that Fajing's sect had been greatly successful in Tuyuhun over the years, so much so that Xuandu Khagan trusts you completely. The more remote the location, the freer you are. You truly took to the place like a fish to water. Yanwuxi's tone always carried a hint of ridicule. The ill-tempered would grow enraged just listening to him, but due to Yanwuxi's martial prowess, there was nothing they could do about it. They could never defeat him. So, over time, this tone became a hallmark of his. Guangling San smiled slightly. We cannot compare with how deeply the Lord of Shou values sect leader Yan. Northern Shou is under your Huan Yue sect's influence, while He Huan sect monopolizes the trust of Emperor of Qi. In South, Chen Dynasty has Lin Chuan Academy, while the Buddhist and Taoist sects scowl on the sidelines. Our Fa Jing sect is alone and weak. All we could do was head far away. Yanwuxi's graceful, slender eyes narrowed just a touch. If that's the case, why not stay in Tuyuhun and continue your operations there? Why did you come to the Shao dynasty? Naturally, it was to seek out sect leader Yan. I would like sect leader Yan to return the Xiangchen bone to Fa Jing. Return, said Yanwuxi with a sneer. Is your name carved upon it? It belonged to my master, said Guangling San coldly. Why wouldn't it be mine? Yanwuxi laughed. 10 years ago, you'd never have dared to say such words to my esteemed self. Where's this bravado coming from? Just how much leopard guts did you eat over the past 10 years? So, in traditional Chinese medicine, eating a specific organ would strengthen that same organ, so it was believed that eating guts would give one courage. Interesting. Though strength was everything in the Jianghu, normally they also maintained a thin veneer they called morals and ethics. But the demonic sects took this principle to its most extreme. As long as you were strong, you could have anything you wanted. And if you were weak, even if you died, you'd only had yourself to blame. 10 years ago, before Yanwuxi's secluded cultivation, he'd crushed the other two sects so utterly that they didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. But a person could forget many things in 10 years, even fear. Of course, Yanwuxi's martial prowess had soared during his 10 years of seclusion, but others had made progress too. Furthermore, Guang Lingsan was also one of the top 10 martial artists in the world. Even if there was a gap between them, it certainly wasn't an uncrossable chasm. Shen Qiao groaned quietly as he struggled to lift his heavy lids and open his eyes. A blurred mass of shadow and light crept into his vision. It wasn't absolute darkness, but what he could see was limited. It wasn't too different from being completely blind, so he simply closed his eyes once again. A gentle voice came from beside his ear. "You're awake, Shen Langjun. The medicine is ready and is still hot. This lowly one will help you drink." It was Ruru's voice. Shen Qiao recognized it. The voice of the maid from the junior preceptor's residence. She'd taken care of everything for him during his time in the junior preceptor's residence. This is the junior preceptor's residence? Shen Qiao only recalled meeting Guang Lingsan, then being unable to hold on and passing out. Ruru covered her mouth and giggled. "Of course your esteemed self is in the junior preceptor's residence. How could Ruru be here otherwise? The master brought you back." She brought the medicine to him and helped him drink, then straightened the bedding beneath him. "The doctor was here and said that you'd suffered from qi and blood deficiency. You must take some blood-enriching medication." Shen Qiao nodded. Where is Sect Leader Yan?" "The master is in the study with Da Langjun." The one she called Da Langjun was none other than Bian Yanmei. Perhaps there were calming agents in that bowl of medicine, for after a few sentences, Shen Qiao involuntarily dozed off again. Dude, you just took like how many battles and hits and are still healing? Like, you might just be tired, my man. When he woke up once more, the room was already dark and there was a blurred silhouette at his side. Sect Leader Yan. He groped his way into a sitting position. Yan Wuxi put down the book he'd held, but didn't move to help him, merely grunting in reply. Guang Lingshan. Here it is again. They have another one. They messed up again. "Guang Lingshan left?" asked Shen Qiao. "He did," said Yan Wuxi, "after we fought. He's skilled, but he shouldn't have been a match for you." That was his only comment on the incident. He didn't seem surprised at Yan Wuxi's timely appearance, nor did he ask about it. "I heard that you fought with Duan Wenyang in the Sioux residence," said Yan Wuxi. "That man was incredibly skilled. Given enough time, he might become as strong as the Hulugu was." "How did he compare to Kunyi?" Quite a bit stronger than Kunyi." "In that case, you only won through pure luck." Shen Qiao didn't play himself up. "True. He had just suffered some minor injuries fighting Li Qingyu. I took advantage of that." "I checked your pulse just now," said Yan Wuxi. "When you fell from that cliff that day, Joyful Reunion's poison had already penetrated deep into your marrow and destroyed your foundations. I used to think that the Shuying strategy could repair your meridians, but examining you now, I see that having only 2 scrolls of 5 yields minimum results. The fact that you're constantly fighting and getting injured is even more problematic. That will only worsen the damage to your Taoist core." Whose fault is that, asshole? Ay. If you go on like this and your Taoist core is completely destroyed, even the gods won't be able to save you. No matter how powerful the Shuying strategy is, it cannot do what even the gods cannot. The Taoist core wasn't any simple core. It held the foundations of Shen Qiao's martial arts, and it lay at the base of the internal cultivation he had built up from childhood. If his Taoist core were destroyed, then all of his moves and techniques would be rendered useless, for he could never again strive for the martial zenith. This was Shen Qiao's current situation. Due to his injury and poisoning, his Taoist core was on the verge of destruction. At this point, gradual restoration via the Shuying strategy's true qi should have been the best way to heal it. But the problem lay in Shen Qiao only knowing 2 of the Shuying strategy scrolls instead of all 5. Making matters worse, it was impossible for him to stay uninvolved in matters within the Jiankou. Every time he fought, his qi was inevitably infected, which damaged his Taoist core. Over time, the problem became a vicious cycle. If a day came where the Shuyang strategy's true qi could no longer repair the damage, then that would mean his foundations had collapsed completely, and he'd be beyond all saving. Incidentally, Yan Wuxi had also contributed to this repeated damage to Shen Qiao's foundations. If he hadn't forced Shen Qiao to fight him again and again, Shen Qiao wouldn't be adding new injuries on top of his old, unhealed ones. What did I say? But at this moment, Sect leader Yan's expression was earnest and solemn, as if he'd selectively forgotten his share of responsibility. Shen Qiao didn't know whether to call him shameless or egotistical. Are you saying you have a solution? Yan Wuxi was unruffled. Indeed I do. If you're willing to toss out your Taoist core and allow me to implement a demonic core inside of you, then you cultivate the Fei Long scriptures, everything will be solved in one stroke. Shen Qiao sighed. I cannot help but admire Sect leader Yan's careful and meticulous execution of his plans. Once the demonic core is implemented, all inevitably become temperamental and erratic, savage and bloodthirsty. Might be a happy thing to you, but for me it would be like losing my true self. Even if it greatly advanced my martial arts, what meaning would there be? Yan Wuxi took on a mocking expression. What is a true self? Humans are evil by nature. Is doing as you desire not true to your true self? Look at that Chen Gong. You showed him so much kindness and even traveled together, sharing with him trials and tribulations. But when a crisis arose, even though there were clearly 100 different ways he could have extracted himself, all he thought to do was draw the disaster to you and drag you down with him. Given his background, no one has ever taught him how to read or behave. Was what he did not true to his true self? Shen Qiao wanted to turn his head away, but he was forcefully yanked back by a hand on his chin, preventing his escape. There was only one reason you were able to faithfully follow your Taoist core and refuse to give up on your so-called principles, said Yan Wuxi. It's because you've never been in a situation so hopeless that you could no longer endure. Am I right? A pair of dull, vacant eyes blinked, their long eyelashes trembling. After a long time, Shen Qiao finally spat out a word. Yes. Yan Wuxi's tone brimmed with malice. No matter how powerful the Shuyang strategy is, it cannot create something out of nothing. If there's no way you'll recover your martial arts in a couple of years with the state you're in, your foundation's damaged, fainting and vomiting blood at the drop of a hat, you might even linger in this half-dead state for the rest of your life. Now that everyone has seen you appear at the Su residence with the junior preceptor's invitation, news of our relationship will spread quickly throughout the Jianghu. My venerable self has enemies everywhere. They can't touch me, but you're an easy target. What do you think they'll do to you if they catch you? Will they torture you into writing out the Shuyang strategy? Or will they do unmentionable things and kill you first, then do unmentionable things to your corpse, some more out of spite? We know what he's implying. When that happens, can you find such a situation endurable? Finally, Shen Qiao couldn't take it anymore. We can talk about this when it actually happens. Sect leader Yan need not trouble himself before then. Yan Wuxi's hand had been slapped aside, but he wasn't angry. Instead, he snorted a laugh, his mood lightening. Come on, I was only scaring you a little. Just that was enough to upset you? Shen Qiao was speechless. There was a saying that grasping a woman's heart was like finding a needle on the ocean floor. But Shen Qiao felt that grasping Yan Wuxi's heart was as impossible as finding a needle in a bottomless abyss. At that moment, there came a knock on the door. Hold on to that statement. Grasping Yan Wuxi's heart was as impossible as finding a needle in a bottomless abyss. That's one. I love the poeticness of that, but also just like, it's one of those where it's like, when you come back to it later on, makes it a little funny. He's not wrong. Like, he's really not. Just saying. At that moment, there came a knock on the door. Enter, said Yuan Wuxi. The maid Ruru came in with a bowl of medicine. Master, this is the second bowl of soup that was prepared for Shen Langjun today. Put it here, said Yuan Wuxi. Ruru put the bowl down as asked, then reminded Shen Qiao. Shen Langjun must drink it while it's hot for utmost effectiveness. Yeah, I agree, Plude. Shen Qiao thanked her, then took the bowl and drank it in one gulp. Shen Qiao had one small shortcoming. He liked sweet things and hated bitter ones. As a child on Xuandu Mountain, where whenever he got sick, he would hide and refuse to take his medicine. When he heard that internal cultivation could make one impervious to heat and cold, he put his all into his training. Everyone else thought he was extra hardworking, while in truth, he was just trying to escape the bitter medicine. But here at Yuan Wuxi's residence, no matter how many bowls of medicine were brought to him, he drank them all without objection. His little habits betrayed him, though. Every time before he raised the bowl, his brows would furrow a little, and when he put the bowl down, the corners of his mouth would twitch. Yuan Wuxi saw all of this. When Shen Qiao finished the medicine, he picked up a candied preserve from the table and shoved it into Shen Qiao's mouth. Ah, Qiao, if you dislike bitter things, he said in a honeyed tone, I'll ask them to put some barley sugar in your medicine in the future. Now smile for me. Don't frown so much. Shen Qiao, lost for words, was utterly exhausted in both body and mind. He's going to stay exhausted until Tuesday, when we read some more, because that is where we're going to end it tonight. Oh, poor Qiao. He just can't get a break from, like, anything. Dude's just trying to, like, heal. Like, he's, yeah. Poor guy. You have a good evening too, Truffle. And everyone else as well. And he definitely is really going through it, Esper Lady. I got what you meant. No, but to everyone that listened and to everyone that's listening later, I hope you have a wonderful evening and or day and that you enjoy. I really enjoy doing this and I'm super excited that we're already on book 2. Once again, sorry for the tech issues at the beginning. Hopefully, that'll be like not a common occurrence as we go into winter, but yeah. Have a good day, and I will see you on Thursday. Good night, everybody. All right, now I just have to find the end stream button. There it is. Good night.